The Xenobiology Institute's cafeteria was never quiet. Not even at dawn. Not even during finals. 100 species meant 100 eating habits, clicking mandibles, simmering nutrient gels, the hum of translation implants, the clatter of metal trays built for hands, claws, tentacles, and things that defied classification. But when the cubs entered, sound collapsed. Human Cadet Rhea Morgan noticed the hush only after the fact. She had just been trying to enjoy her meal, synthetic rice, grilled polystarch, and a mug of something the cafeteria insisted was coffee. She was used to stares, whispers, the occasional commendation from professors fascinated by her death world physiology. But this silence was different. It was too sudden, too sharp. Like a predator's breath before a strike. Her fork hovered halfway to her mouth as she realized the background noise had evaporated. She froze mid-motion. Then something nudged her boot. Rhea lowered her gaze and found a pair of crystalline eyes staring up at her. Wide, luminous, and impossibly curious. A cub, no taller than her knee, clung to the leg of her table, its bioluminescent fur pulsing soft amber. "Oh," she whispered. "Hello?" A second cub climbed up beside the first, paws scrabbling on the metal frame. A third hopped directly onto the bench, so fast she barely saw the movement. Within seconds there were 4 of them crowding in around her, sniffing, chirping, bumping her elbows, brushing against her hands like affectionate, hyperactive toddlers. Across the cafeteria, hundreds of students stared in frozen horror. These weren't ordinary cubs. They were Carnathy stalker cubs, the young of a species that, fully grown, could run down a hover bike and tear through hull plating with their teeth. Even younglings had enough jaw pressure to snap an unshielded limb. Their presence outside containment was unthinkable. Their interest in a lone human? Even worse. Rhea felt the tension in the room like static electricity. One cub climbed directly into her lap, placing its forepaws on her chest and staring into her eyes. She whispered, unsure whether to inhale or not. "Can I help you?" The cub blinked, then made a chirr that sounded dangerously close to a demand. Every other species in the cafeteria recoiled at once. Rhea just smiled. The command didn't come from a professor, or a security officer, or even someone with authority. It came from a terrified student 10 tables away, a feathered Avraxian who had dropped his tray so violently that broth splattered across the floor. Rhea didn't move anyway. Mostly because she couldn't. The cub in her lap had placed both forepaws squarely against her sternum, pinning her with surprising strength for something that looked like a glowing, oversized kitten. Its fur bristled with shifting stripes of amber and violet. Signs of heightened curiosity, if she remembered her xenobiology modules correctly. The cafeteria doors slammed open. Everyone flinched except Rhea and the cubs. 2 Carnathy handlers burst inside, armor plates clicking, visors sweeping rapidly across the room. "Where are the younglings?" one barked. A trembling tentacled student pointed straight at Rhea. The handlers' eyes widened behind their visors. Both froze in place as if confronted with a bomb. "For the love of the ancients," the second handler whispered. "Why are they on her?" Rhea raised her free hand half-heartedly. "They climbed?" The cub in her lap pressed its snout into the front of her jacket, inhaling deeply. Its nostrils flared with soft blue. Its siblings pawed at her food tray, investigating the synthetic rice like it held the secrets of the universe. A ripple of panic spread through the cafeteria. Whispered voices echoed against the high ceilings. "Are they going to bite her? Why isn't she screaming? Is she trying to domesticate them? They're imprinting. Someone stop them." Rhea blinked. Imprinting? That wasn't in the module. One of the handlers took a cautious step forward. "Human cadet, do not make any sudden." The cub in her lap interrupted with a sharp chirp, whipping its head toward the handler and giving a warning trill, not aggressive, exactly, but extremely possessive. "Oh stars!" the handler groaned. "It's choosing her. They're choosing her." Rhea's smile turned nervous. "Choosing me for what exactly?" No one answered. The cub on the table padded forward, stopping inches from her untouched mug of coffee. It leaned in, sniffed with exaggerated delicacy, and sneezed so explosively it nearly launched itself backward. Rhea laughed before she could stop herself. Every non-human in the room recoiled like she had just pet a live plasma coil. The cub in her lap blinked up at her, slowly, calmly, then pressed its forehead against her sternum with a soft hum. And the entire cafeteria lost its collective mind. The handlers exchanged a look that could only be described as catastrophic resignation. They slowly approached, palms up, no sudden movements, steps so controlled they bordered on ritual. "Human cadet," one said carefully. "You need to stay exactly as you are. The younglings appear to have initiated a proto-bonding behavior." Rhea arched an eyebrow. "Proto-bonding? With me?" The cub in her lap rumbled a soft vibration through its chest, almost a purr, but with an undercurrent of power that made the metal bench tremble. The others gathered closer, forming a glowing, bioluminescent ring around her plate of food like furry, adorable warlords guarding treasure. A tall reptilian student whispered, "This is unprecedented." Another replied, "This is suicidal." Rhea sighed. "Look, they just climbed up here. I didn't do anything special." The nearest handler winced. "That's the problem." The cub on the bench nudged her wrist insistently. When she didn't respond immediately, it pawed at her sleeve, eyes bright and imploring. Its stripes flickered warm gold, an emotion she didn't know but instinctively understood. It wanted a reaction. A sign. "Permission?" Rhea lifted her hand slowly. The cafeteria held its breath. The cub leaned in, and pressed its forehead against her palm. A shockwave of sound, gasps, chokes, frantic trills, echoed around the room. The handlers slapped the side of their helmet, panic rising. "It's official. They've imprinted. On a human. They'll follow her now." "Follow her where?" Rhea asked. "To the ends of the stars," the handler snapped. "Do you know what happens when Carnathi cubs imprint on a non-Carnathi?" She opened her mouth. "No." Before he could explain, the cubs all emitted a synchronous chirp and, like coordinated commandos, clambered onto her table, crowding her lunch, her personal space, her entire day. One pushed her tray closer with its snout. Another nudged her mug toward her like a waiter encouraging a customer to try the special. The smallest sat upright and thumped its tail with impatient enthusiasm. "They want you to eat," a student whispered. "They're offering protection while you feed." "Wait, protection from what?" Rhea asked. The smaller cub suddenly spun toward a nearby Glunthian student who had taken one step too close. It gave a sharp, unmistakable warning growl. The student froze. The cubs tightened their circle. Every gaze in the cafeteria snapped back to Rhea. The implication settled over her like a weighted blanket. She wasn't just interesting to them. To the cubs, she was now part of their pack. And they would defend her, whether she liked it or not. Rhea tried to breathe normally, but it wasn't easy with 4 bioluminescent Death World cubs forming a living perimeter around her lunch tray. Their tails flicked in synchronized arcs, their ears angled outward, every instinct tuned toward defending her from anything and everything that dared come close. "I think," she whispered, "they're overreacting." The nearest handler nearly choked. "Human cadet, Carnathi don't overreact. They calculate risk with surgical precision. If they're guarding you, it means they've identified multiple threats in this room." Rhea glanced around. Dozens of students were frozen mid-step, mid-bite, mid-breath. Even the cafeteria servitors had halted in place, trays dripping nutrient paste in slow motion. "I don't see any threats," she murmured. "That's because you're the human," the handler replied. "To them, every unknown variable is hostile until proven peaceful." One cub hopped from the table to her shoulder, claws retracting delicately so it wouldn't pierce her jacket. It perched like a glowing sentinel, scanning the cafeteria with twitching precision. Another sat directly on her tray, plopping its rear into her food without an ounce of shame. "Oh, come on," Rhea groaned. "That was my lunch." The handler made a strangled noise. "Do not reprimand it. Please! They could interpret it as rejection. The cub on her tray made a pleased chirp, oblivious to the panic it caused. Across the cafeteria, an insected professor cautiously raised a trembling limb. Excuse me, but if memory serves, protobonding only occurs when a Carnathi detects strong emotional resonance in a target species. What precisely were you doing just before they approached? Rhea blinked. Eating? Eating what? Another alien asked. Rice. They imprinted on her for rice? A hushed voice buzzed. But Rhea felt something tugging at the edge of her awareness. A detail she had overlooked. The cub in her lap, once restless, had gone still. Its glowing stripes dimmed to a soft, warm gold. Its breathing slowed. It stared at her with such focused intensity that Rhea forgot to blink. Wait, she murmured. The room leaned in. When they came up to me, they were trembling. The handler stiffened. Trembling? From fear? No, Rhea said slowly. From hunger. The smallest cub chirped in agreement, bumping its head into her stomach. Rhea's eyes widened. She looked at her tray. Then at the cubs. The handlers swore under their breath. They weren't seeking a bond, Rhea whispered. They were seeking food. The handler dropped his helmeted face into his hands. Stars preserve us. They chose the human who feeds her predators. Rhea reached toward the smallest cub without thinking. It pressed its head into her palm, and the bond deepened like a lock clicking into place. The handlers tried, truly tried, not to panic. But panic was unavoidable when 4 apex predator cubs had just declared a human as their primary food source, emotional anchor, and mobile fortress. One handler whispered frantically into his calm. Lock down containment sector. I repeat, lock it down. The younglings have imprinted on a death welder. The reply was a long, horrified shriek. Meanwhile, Rhea stared at the cubs crowding her tray. So, you're hungry, she murmured. 4 heads snapped toward her in perfect unison. Glowing stripes brightened. Tails thumped. A chorus of chirps echoed like a pack of furry alarm clocks. Okay, hold on. She reached for her fork. The entire cafeteria tensed so violently it felt like the air itself was sucked out. Human cadet, the handler hissed. Do not attempt to feed. Too late. Rhea scooped a small mound of synthetic rice and held the fork toward the smallest cub. The tiny predator leaned forward, sniffed, and gently closed its jaws around the morsel with surprising delicacy. It chewed twice, swallowed, then made a bubbling chirr of pure bliss. The handler nearly collapsed. Stars above, she's feeding them out of sequence. If she feeds one, she must feed all, or they might. Rhea was already doing it. One cub after another, she offered a small bite, keeping the portions even. They rotated like planets around her hand, each patiently awaiting their turn. The cafeteria did not breathe. When she finished, each cub sat perfectly still, facing her, bioluminescence dimming into a soft glow that radiated satisfaction. That wasn't so bad, she said lightly. The handler made a noise between a groan and a whimper. Do you understand what you've done? Rhea blinked. Fed them? You completed the imprinting ritual. Rhea froze. What ritual? The handler paced, helmet shaking. Feeding. Touch. Eye contact. Reciprocity. You've hit every imprinting trigger in the Carnathi cultural manual. They didn't just bond to you, they accepted you as their den mother. Rhea's soul left her body. The cafeteria gasped in a single, collective inhale. The cubs chirped proudly, puffing their chests. Oh no, Rhea whispered. No. I can't be anyone's. Too late. The cubs surged forward, pressing against her legs, her arms, her sides, forming a glowing heap of warm fur and deadly sharp affection. A student in the back fainted. Rhea put her face in her hands. I just wanted lunch. The smallest cub climbed up her arm and curled under her chin. And the cafeteria realized the truth. The cubs weren't guarding her. They were claiming her. The handlers were deep in crisis mode now, one pacing back and forth, muttering curses in Carnathi, the other tapping frantically at a datapad as if sheer speed would override disaster. Rhea sat very, very still while 4 glowing stalker cubs arranged themselves around her like living, purring landmines. "Okay," she whispered, keeping her voice low and soothing. "You're all very cute, but I am not a den mother. I'm a first-year cadet with 3 exams next week." The cubs ignored her completely. One sat proudly on her thigh. Another curled on her shoulder, tail wrapped behind her neck like a warm scarf. A third guarded her plate, growling softly whenever someone dared glance in her direction. The smallest was still nestled under her chin, radiating smug happiness. The handler stopped pacing. "We need to make one thing clear. If the cubs interpret a threat toward you, they will escalate with extreme prejudice." Rhea winced. "Meaning?" "Meaning," he said, pointing at a deep claw mark on the metal floor. "That." Rhea's stomach dropped. A towering 4-armed genetically professor raised a trembling limb. "Human cadet, may I ask why they chose you?" "Karnathi younglings imprint only when they sense a rare combination of fearlessness, stability, and emotional resonance." Rhea blinked. "I was eating rice." "That's impossible," the professor snapped. "There must be more." The cafeteria waited. The cub on her shoulder nuzzled her cheek. The one on her lap hummed softly. Rhea felt heat rise in her face. "I might have been thinking about my dog." The handler froze. The professor froze. Half the cafeteria froze. "Your what?" the handler croaked. "My dog," Rhea repeated. "Back home. He used to climb onto my lap during meals. These guys just reminded me of him for a moment." A long, stunned silence. Then, "Emotional transference," the professor shouted, nearly throwing himself backward. "She projected familiarity, comfort, the sense memory of pack bonding. You triggered the ancestral recognition node in their neural pattern." Rhea frowned. "I did what now?" "In short," the handler said flatly, "they think you're family." Every cub chirped in perfect agreement. Rhea dropped her head onto the table and groaned. Across the cafeteria, a timid voice piped up. "Should we leave?" "Slowly?" Before Rhea could answer, the cub guarding her plate snarled so viciously that 3 nearby students ran for the exit like their lives depended on it. The smallest cub wriggled upward, placing its paws on her cheeks and staring at her with deep, trusting eyes. "Great," she muttered. "I've adopted 4 apex predators by accident." The cubs purred louder. And the cafeteria finally realized. The human hadn't gained stalker cub protection. The stalker cubs had gained a human. The handlers regrouped like medics preparing for battlefield triage. One pulled out a tranquilizer injector the size of Rhea's forearm. The other snatched it away instantly. "No sedatives!" he hissed. "If the cubs sense chemical coercion, they'll enter defensive overload." "Defensive overload?" Rhea echoed. He pointed to the wall behind her. It was dented. Deeply. Rhea swallowed. The 4 cubs, oblivious to the existential dread they caused, began to bustle around her like fuzzy diplomats assembling for a summit. Each one took a position. The one on her shoulder perched proudly, tail swaying like a commander's banner. The one on her lap flopped across her knees, humming vibrations that made her ribs buzz. The plate guarder still sat sentinel beside her tray, growling at anyone with an eyeball. The runt settled against her chest, paws kneading her shirt in bliss. The cafeteria watched as if she were sitting in the middle of a fragile, adorable apocalypse. The genetically professor cleared his throat. "Human Cadet Rhea, do you understand what this means?" "No," she said honestly. "It means," he said, voice wavering between awe and terror, "they have claimed you." Rhea blinked. "Like adopted? Or like claimed?" The handler interrupted bluntly. "As in, you leave, they leave. You move, they move. You eat, they eat." The plate guarder chirped and nudged her food bowl toward her. "See?" Rhea stared at the cubs. The cubs stared back, eyes wide and shining with unshakable devotion. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no. I can't be responsible for 4 apex predator babies. The cubs tilted their heads in perfect synchronization. The professor clasped all 4 hands dramatically. They have chosen. The bond has formed. One cub placed its paw on her chest, right over her heartbeat. The cafeteria gasped. The handler swore. Rhea panicked. Guys, listen, she said softly, addressing the cubs as though conducting hostage negotiations. I can't be your mom. I have exams. And a roommate. And a tiny dorm bed. And no experience raising anything with fangs that glow. The cub on her lap squeaked indignantly. The shoulder cub puffed its fur in disbelief. The runt burrowed closer, trembling, actual trembling, until Rhea instinctively wrapped an arm around it to steady it. A sound like 100 tiny coos rippled from the cubs. The cafeteria nearly melted. Human Cadet Rhea, the professor whispered reverently. You have just performed the Karnathi's soothing hold, purely by instinct. Rhea froze. What? That gesture is biologically coded into their early development. A trusted adult shelters them like that during environmental danger. They will now follow you anywhere. The cubs chirped proudly, confirming his words. The handlers exchanged looks of pure despair. Rhea felt the weight of 4 warm bodies leaning into her like she was a gravitational anchor. Fantastic, she murmured. I'm a walking daycare. The plate guarder gently nudged food toward her again. Correction. A protected walking daycare. The Academy's emergency response team arrived in a flurry of flashing lights and armored boots, only to freeze mid-stride when they saw the situation. A tiny human surrounded by 4 bioluminescent predator cubs, all of whom were snuggled against her like fuzzy radiation-emitting pillows. One responder slowly lowered their shield. Another whispered, We trained for riots, ambushes, chemical spills. We did not train for this. Rhea raised a hand weakly. Hi. Please don't make any sudden movements. The cubs, taking her gesture as some kind of ceremonial cue, chirped loudly and nuzzled tighter around her. Rhea stiffened as the runt climbed her shoulder and wrapped itself around the back of her neck, purring directly into her ear. She tried to maintain dignity. She failed. Completely. The lead responder pointed at her. Human Cadet, remain still. We are attempting to prevent a catastrophic bonding incident. Attempt failed, Rhea said miserably. Catastrophe achieved. A handler groaned. One of the responders activated a hollow briefing midair. A rotating model of a Karnathi adult appeared, massive, horned, armored, the size of a large industrial vehicle. Once imprinted, the responder read, the younglings will seek proximity to the bonded adult even after maturation. Projection they will grow to. The cub on her lap let out a soft chirp. The hollow depicted the adult version roaring, leveling a forest. Approximately that. The room began sweating collectively. Rhea looked at the cubs, then at the future planet-splitting monsters they would become. No, she whispered. Absolutely not. I can barely afford my laundry tokens. The professor stepped forward, voice trembling with scientific elation. Human Cadet Rhea, the cubs' neural signatures are syncing to your biochemistry. They have accepted you as their anchor organism. Their future development will be shaped around, and guided by, your emotional patterns. The runt chirped approvingly, rubbing its glowing forehead against her cheek. Rhea felt her soul leave her body. A nearby student whispered, Is she going to have to raise them? The handler sighed deeply. Unless we break the bond, which has never been done in recorded history, yes. Rhea stiffened. Break the bond? How? The handler hesitated. You can't. Not without causing them psychological collapse. All 4 cubs immediately made sad, wobbling sounds, as if they understood. Rhea's heart cracked in self-defense. Okay, she said quickly, hugging the trembling runt. No breaking anything. The cubs perked up instantly, lighting the table with bright pulses. A responder slumped into a chair. We're doomed. The professor clasped his hands with gleeful horror. Human Cadet Rhea, congratulations. You are now the center of a multi-species diplomatic crisis. Rhea closed her eyes. This morning she just wanted breakfast. Now she had 4 glowing war beasts imprinted on her DNA. And the entire cafeteria watched as one deadly cub climbed onto her head like a crown. A fuzzy, purring, galaxy-shaking crown. The next morning, Rhea expected the academy to quietly sweep everything under a bureaucratic rug. Instead, she woke up to the gentle hum of 4 cubs sleeping in a glowing pile on her stomach, and the holographic alert blinking red on her dorm ceiling. Mandatory council hearing, 2 hours. Subject: the human who accidentally adopted 4 strategic class predators. Rhea stared at the message, then at the cubs, then back at the message. No, she muttered. Absolutely not. I'm not presenting to the council in my pajamas. The cubs chirped awake, instantly delighted to see her. One tried to groom her hair. Another tried to eat her blanket. By the time she got dressed, they had followed her around the dorm like glowing ducklings, their bioluminescence shifting colors to match her emotions: embarrassment pink, anxiety green, mild despair turquoise. When she stepped outside, the hallway went dead silent. Dozens of cadets froze, holographic feeds popped open, and someone whispered, "Is that the human ambassador?" Rhea snapped, "I'm not an ambassador." The cubs nuzzled her ankles soothingly. Great. Even her emotional support war beasts were pitying her. When she reached the courtyard, 3 shuttles were already waiting, sleek, obsidian black, and heavily guarded. Not for her safety, she knew. For everyone else's. The lead officer bowed stiffly. "Human Cadet Rhea. The council requests your presence along with the entities." The smallest cub climbed up her leg like a tree, claiming its spot on her shoulder. The guards flinched. Someone made a choking noise. Rhea said. "Do they need to be in restraints?" A horrified chorus replied. "No." Apparently, restraining a bonded Carnathi juvenile was the universal shortcut to civilization-ending disaster. Rhea stepped into the shuttle. All 4 cubs followed, vibrating with excitement as if they were heading to a theme park rather than interstellar judgment. The craft lifted, slicing through the atmosphere toward the great orbital ring where the Galactic Council convened. Through the viewport, Rhea saw the vast circular structure looming above. Hundreds of species represented, thousands of diplomats, all currently focused on one agenda item. Her palms went sweaty. The cubs sensed it instantly, glowing a calm lavender as they pressed close, trying to soothe her. "Stop that," she whispered. "You're going to make me emotional." The biggest cub licked her elbow. She nearly cried. By the time the shuttle docked, a full delegation was waiting: diplomats, scientists, translators, and a medical squad on standby. Gasps rippled through the crowd as the cubs trotted out around her like a royal escort. "This is fine," Rhea told herself. "This is normal. Everybody accidentally adopts planet-melting predators at least once in their academic career." The Carnathi ambassador, a towering, armored titan, stepped forward. Its 4 eyes narrowed at her, then widened at the cubs. It spoke, voice rumbling like tectonic plates. "Human Cadet Rhea, why do our sacred younglings follow you?" The cubs chirped, pressed against her legs, glowed in near-blinding devotion. And the entire council leaned forward. Rhea swallowed. Lunch got weird?" The council chamber was everything Rhea feared, massive, echoing, and far too focused on her. Tiered rows of alien delegates sprawled outward like a judgmental amphitheater, each species perched behind glowing nameplates. A million eyes, literal and metaphorical, locked onto the tiny human flanked by 4 humming, bioluminescent stalker cubs. A council scribe cleared his throat. "Let the record show, Subject Rhea Torres, human cadet, stands before the Galactic Council in response to Incident 77 Beta, also known as the Cafeteria imprinting catastrophe." A wave of murmurs rolled around the chamber. The Carnathi ambassador leaned forward, mandibles tight. "Explain how you established a familial bond with our young." Rhea inhaled. The cubs sensed her tension and glowed a soft, supportive blue, spiraling patterns rippling along their flanks. Delegates flinched as one. Rhea whispered, "Guys, subtle. Subtle." They glowed brighter. "Wonderful." She raised her hand. "Okay, this is going to sound really dumb, but my dog used to do the same stuff they did. Climb on my lap. Nuzzle me. Steal my food. And for a second, I guess I just remembered him." A dozen recording drones zoomed in. The ambassador's eyes widened. "You triggered their imprint reflex with nostalgia?" "I didn't mean to," Rhea squeaked. "I was just hungry." A Exorian delegate, a mass of floating crystal plates, hummed thoughtfully. "Human emotional projection appears dangerously potent. Her memory alone reprogrammed Karnathi Apex offspring." Rhea's heart dropped. "Oh, come on, I didn't reprogram anybody." But the Science Tribunal was already conferring, voices echoing across channels. "Human empathy, anomalously strong. Cross-species imprinting unprecedented. Potential military implications immeasurable." Rhea felt sick. One of the cubs climbed into her lap right there in the council chamber. Another curled around her ankles, purring like a reactor coil. The smallest perched on her shoulder and chirped at the council as if saying she's ours. "Back off." The murmurs became chaos. Finally, the ambassador slammed its staff. "Silence!" The chamber hushed. It turned to Rhea. "Human cadet, we face a dilemma. By Karnathi law, the younglings have chosen you as kin. Breaking an imprint bond risks psychological collapse and catastrophic aggression. Therefore," Rhea tensed, "the Karnathi Dominion formally requests that you accept official guardianship." The room exploded into outrage. "Unacceptable, she is untrained. The humans will gain undue influence. Those creatures could level a moon. This violates a dozen treaties." Rhea felt faint. "I'm 18, she protested. "I can barely keep a houseplant alive." The ambassador bowed his massive head. "Nevertheless, they chose you." All four cubs pressed against her at once, warm, humming, trusting. And for the first time, Rhea truly understood. If she said no, the universe might literally break. She exhaled shakily. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll take care of them." The cubs chirped triumphantly. The council panicked. And the fate of at least 3 star systems quietly shifted. Rhea blinked, trying to process the formal implications of what she had just agreed to. Guardianship of 4 apex predator cubs. Not just any cubs, mind you. These were genetically engineered, multi-toned, bioluminescent, and apparently psychically aware enough to bond with a human. The council murmured in disbelief. Delegates scribbled in multiple languages, holographic fingers tracing diagrams of Rhea's new jurisdiction. Security drones hovered cautiously near the cubs, who ignored them entirely, as if drones were background noise in a symphony composed entirely of her. The Karnathi ambassador, still looming, cleared its throat. "Human Cadet Torres, we shall now proceed with the formal induction of guardianship. By law, the cub's survival, behavioral development, and interstellar legal accountability fall under your authority." Rhea blinked. "Wait. Authority, legally?" "Yes," the ambassador said. "You are now responsible. If they misbehave, you are accountable. If they..." It paused, a frill twitching nervously. "Eat a diplomat, you are personally culpable." Rhea gulped. She looked down at the smallest cub, perched happily on her shoulder, tail curling like a question mark. It gave a contented chirp, as if sensing her panic. "Oh," she said slowly. "So basically, parent-level responsibility." "Got it. But like, intergalactic parent level?" "Yes," the ambassador replied. "And you will be provided a suite of support staff, a legal envoy, and a behavioral liaison, but the primary responsibility remains with you." The council erupted in whispers and protests. Humans taking formal guardianship of alien apex predators? Protocols were not designed for this. Aexorian delegates' floating crystals trembled in agitation. "This is unprecedented. They could topple ecosystems if mismanaged. Rhea ran a hand through her hair. Ecosystems. Got it. She cast a glance at the cubs. One yawned, revealing a row of glowing, serrated teeth. Another purred so loudly it vibrated her ribcage. They were adorable, but dangerous. She felt a mixture of awe and dread. The ambassador's gaze softened. Do not underestimate your influence. Humans have historically displayed unexpected synchrony with apex predators. Your species' empathy manifests in ways that can stabilize even the most volatile beings. Rhea swallowed. I stabilize? I don't even have a degree in interstellar zoology. I'm basically a really responsible teenager with a soft spot for animals. The cubs nudged her reassuringly. One climbed into her lap. Another settled across her knees like a living, bioluminescent blanket. Rhea couldn't help but laugh nervously. Congratulations, the ambassador said. You are now, officially, the first human apex caretaker recognized by the Galactic Council. Rhea exhaled. The weight of history pressed down on her, tempered by the warmth of four curious, trusting, lethal little creatures who had decided, quite emphatically, that she was theirs. Somewhere in the back of her mind, she wondered if the universe would ever be the same. One thing was certain, lunchroom chaos had officially escalated to galactic legend. The council chambers cleared slowly, leaving Rhea with her 4 cubs and a small retinue of advisors and aides. The cubs, now more relaxed, explored the space with curiosity rather than chaos. One nuzzled her neck, another pawed gently at the edge of her tunic, bioluminescent stripes glowing in rhythm with their soft purrs. Rhea knelt, letting them cluster around her. Okay, she murmured, voice low but firm. We're going to do this together. No accidents. No unnecessary chaos. Deal? The cubs chirped as if in agreement. Their eyes, bright and intelligent, locked onto hers with a depth that sent a shiver down her spine. They weren't just animals. They were partners, capable of sensing her emotions, responding to her intent, and, she suspected, teaching her something about herself she hadn't known yet. The lead aide cleared his throat. Cadet Torres, with your new legal status, the Council recommends immediate acclimation protocols. You'll receive your residence on Nova Primis and a team of behavioral specialists trained in multi-species interaction. Rhea exhaled. So, basically, we're moving to a space mansion with my new lethal pets? Yes, the aide said dryly. And yes, lethal, but manageable if you maintain control. Rhea glanced at the cubs, who now sprawled across her lap, yawning, stretching, and occasionally batting at her fingers. She smiled softly, a sense of calm settling over her. This wasn't fear. This wasn't chaos. This was trust. And that trust, she realized, was her power. Humans had survived the deadliest planets not through brute strength alone, but because they could anchor the wild, soothe the impossible, and coexist with beings that defied every protocol. One cub climbed her shoulder again, tail curling around her neck. She felt a thrill of exhilaration. The galaxy, with all its rules and dangers, suddenly seemed smaller, more manageable, because she wasn't facing it alone. Not really. Dean Haros Solari's words echoed in her mind. They survived death worlds because they could tame them. And now, she understood fully. She wasn't just a caretaker. She was part of a lineage humans had almost lost, a living bridge between chaos and order, instinct and reason, predator and human. Outside the chamber, the galaxy was watching. The news feeds would carry stories of Rhea Torres and the Cafeteria incident for centuries. But she knew the truth. The story wasn't about chaos or fear. It was about connection. It was about what humans were capable of when they listened instead of imposing, when they felt instead of just reacted. Rhea rose, the cubs moving in harmony with her. She touched each one lightly, a promise of safety, understanding, and companionship. We're going to be legends, she whispered. Not the kind written in archives, not the kind recounted with fear, but the kind written in trust, empathy, and the quiet bravery of everyday moments. And with that, the cubs followed her out of the council chambers. Their bioluminescent stripes pulsed in sync with her heartbeat, a rhythm older than politics, older than law, older than fear. The cafeteria chaos had been just the beginning. The galaxy had just met a human who could calm predators. And it had never seen anything like it before.